3 years after our breakup, I ran into Sean at a drinking party. He was the one who would nervously bring me hot water to warm my stomach when I had a stomachache. In front of everyone, he poured the strong liquor in his hand into 10 glasses in front of me. With a flippant tone, he said, "Miss Zhang, if you want resources, then drink. When asking for help, one should have an attitude of asking for help." Someone beside us kindly reminded him, "General Sean, she has a stomach problem. If she drinks all of it, she will have to be hospitalized." Sean, without changing his expression, pushed the glasses in front of me. "Really? Then it shows sincerity." When I saw Sean, my heart trembled suddenly. I didn't expect to run into him in such an occasion after 3 years. Jessie beside me was extremely excited. "Yolanda, I didn't expect the investor this time to be General Sean. He is a famous upstart recently. Young, handsome, powerful and influential. I don't know how many people in the circle want to cling to him. You work hard. As long as he nods, your role this time will be stable." Sean stood lazily in the distance, with a smile on his lips and an elegant posture. I couldn't help looking at his face and clearly heard my own heartbeat, which made my chest numb. Sean seemed to sense something and suddenly looked over, looking at me across the crowd. His gaze was indifferent, as if looking at a stranger, and then he casually shifted his gaze away. I lowered my head and gave a wry smile, feeling a soreness in my heart. Jessie excitedly grabbed my hand. "Yolanda, so handsome." When he glanced at me just now, I felt my heart was about to jump out. "You said if he stared at you gently. Who could resist it?" "I can't even imagine." When taking a seat, the director introduced me to Sean. "General Sean. This is the tentatively decided female lead. Take a look and get to know each other." I gathered my thoughts and got up with a smile. "Hello. I am Yolanda." The air fell silent, and my outstretched hand hung awkwardly in my dress. Sean sat and looked at me. When the smile on my face was about to collapse, he finally spoke. "Sorry. I have a strong preference for cleanliness." The people beside us laughed and pushed me back, making up for the situation with a smile. My thoughts followed his words and went back to the past. In a quiet afternoon, Sean held me in his arms, and the tenderness in his eyes turned into substance. "Yolanda, I like you so much." I ignored him, and he childishly asked me, "I love you so much. When will you love me as much as I do?" I amused. I touched his hair. "I already like you very much." He rubbed his head against my palm like a spoiled child. "It's not enough. You have to like me more." I promised with a smile. "Okay. I will like you more and more." Only then did he smile satisfactorily, and picked me up and returned to the bedroom. The curtains were drawn, and the room was dim. After sitting down, I stared at my own hand for a while. In just 3 short years, things have changed completely. Too during the toasts, Jessie looked at Ava on the other side, who was competing with me for the female lad and was extremely anxious. "Yolanda, you should go and fight for it. Look how active Ava is." I sat still and watched Ava, with a soft posture and seductive eyes thrown at Sean. Sean seemed to be in a good mood and listened to her with a faint smile. The scene in front of me was extremely dazzling. My eyes were sour, and I secretly scolded myself for being so useless. The surroundings gradually quieted down. I looked up in a trance and saw the director looking at me. I looked at him in confusion. He had impatience in his eyes. "General Sean asked you to perform a scene for him. What are you dawdling for?" I quickly got up. This play was hard won for me by Jessie. This opportunity must not be missed. I stood in the crowd, pinching the corner of my clothes, hesitating. Ava looked at me with a smile, with a hidden barb in her words. Sister John may not be used to it yet. After all, she has never played the female lead before. It's inevitable to be a little nervous. Most of the people around were investors who didn't understand much about acting. They just regarded us as tools for teasing and entertaining. Actually, I didn't care much about these things. It was just that doing these things in front of Sean always made me feel a little embarrassed. The director was getting anxious. What are you hesitating for? I just asked you to perform a scene. What airs are you putting on? As I heard the urging in his words, and just took a step forward and put on a smile, I was interrupted by Sean. Do people like you have feelings? How can people without feelings act well? No need to perform. You don't need to act in this play. He casually pointed at Ava. You will be the female lead. Ava was beaming with joy. I was like being doused with a basin of cold water, and froze on the spot. Do people like you have feelings? He also said this to me on the day we broke up. 3 on that day. He was like an abandoned cub. Pitiful and helpless. Yolanda. Don't leave me. I only have you. If you don't want me, what should I do? I looked at his trembling hand and paused. Then I replied inferently. Let's break up. I'm really tired. His voice was extremely hoarse. Don't be like this. I will work harder. I promise. I looked at him coldly. With a calm tone. Sean. Let's break up. Don't drag me down anymore. His eyes were red. He held my wrist tightly and tried to find a trace of emotion on my face. After a moment, he slowly released his hand and stared at me resentfully. You say I am a burden now. You think you will live better without me, right? His voice grew louder and louder, every word filled with pain. Do you have feelings, Yolanda? Do you have a heart? I remained silent and let him vent. He slowly released my hand. You will definitely regret this. I will make you regret doing this. At that time, I smiled and touched his face. I'll be waiting to see. He angrily shook off my hand and turned to leave. I looked up at the sun in the sky. There was a wave of dizziness before my eyes. I thought in confusion. It's a sunny day. Then why is my face wet? Looking at Sean in front of me who could casually make all my efforts go to waste with a single word, I couldn't help but admire in my heart. He really did it. Sister Hua stood up in a panic and bowed humbly to Sean to apologize. General Sean. I'm really sorry. Please consider it again. Our Yolanda is really very good. It's just that she has never had much opportunity. Sean didn't pay any attention to Sister Hua. He just looked at me with a smile. I knew he was waiting for me to bow my head. I couldn't let Sister Hua suffer for me. So I stepped forward, helped Sister Hua, who was bowing continuously, and forced a perfect smile at Sean. General Sean. It's my fault for being ignorant. Please give me another chance. The door was pushed open with a bang. Simon rushed in. I looked at him in surprise. The director was even more astonished. Simon. Why are you here? Didn't you say you had something to do and couldn't come? Simon is the male lead of this drama. It was he who recommended me to the director at that time. He is also my only friend in this circle. For Simon came forward and looked at me with concern. Are you okay? I thought I wouldn't make it in time. I shook my head to signal him not to worry. Sean sneered. He called the waiter and whispered a few words. A few minutes later, the waiter pushed a cart. There were a row of cups and several large bottles of wine on it. It stopped in front of me. Sean waved the waiter away and slowly lifted his hand to open all the wine bottles. A strong smell of alcohol spread out. It filled the entire room. My face changed and I clenched my fist and looked at him. I have stomach problems. He knows this. A few years ago when we were still together, life was not wealthy. He and I were working day and night every day. I often skipped meals to save money. Over time, there was a problem with my stomach. When my stomach problem flared up, he was so nervous that his fingers trembled and he stammered and couldn't speak clearly. As if it was him who was in pain, he placed me on the sofa and busily went to the kitchen. Yolanda, does it still hurt? He was almost in tears with heartache. He fed me the soft and mushy porridge. When sleeping, he kept rubbing my stomach to relieve the pain. When I got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, he was still making mechanical movements. As soon as I moved, he was awakened and asked me in a low voice, "What's wrong? Does it hurt again?" I gently patted him and imitated his way and lowered my voice. "No. I'm going to the toilet. Do you want to come with me?" His face flushed red. He looked at me shyly and angrily. It was completely different from him now. He looked down for a moment, picked up a bottle of wine, and filled 10 cups. Looking up at my pale face, he opened his mouth pleasantly. "Drink. If you ask for something, you have to have an attitude of asking. Fortune changes." Now it's my turn to observe his expression. There was a sarcastic smile on his face. I covered my stomach that was starting to ache faintly. I didn't eat a single bite just now. My stomach can't tolerate these greasy meals outside. He must have seen it, and deliberately made things difficult for me. I pursed my lips and knowingly reached out to pick up the cup. He looked at me, and the corner of his mouth slightly curved up. Simon pressed my hand and restrainedly persuaded him. "Her stomach is not good. Drinking 1 cup will send her to the hospital. Drinking all of them will definitely cause stomach bleeding." Sean stared at Simon's hand with a sinister look. He said word by word through clenched teeth, "That would be even better. Only when it hurts can her sincerity be shown. Otherwise, she doesn't have to earn this money." The room became quiet. Everyone could see that Sean was deliberately making things difficult for me. I must have offended him somewhere. Sister Hua was extremely anxious. She came to me and lowered her voice. "Yolanda, we don't want the script. Your health is important. In the entertainment circle, people are used to treating others differently based on their status. If we end up in an unpleasant situation today, probably no one will dare to ask you to act in a play in the future." I slowly pushed Simon's hand away. "It's okay. I'll drink." Simon couldn't bear it anymore. "I can drink for her. Can't I?" The smile on Sean's face completely disappeared and his face darkened. "Only she can drink. What are you?" It was even quieter in the room. He was imposing now. Simon stood in front and didn't look good. I reached out and pulled Simon behind me. "Don't make things difficult for him. I will finish drinking." Sean looked at my action. The coldness in his eyes became even stronger. He gently lifted his chin and pushed the cup towards me. Impatiently, "Please, Miss Zhang." I reached out and picked up the cup. I closed my eyes and took a big sip. Then I suddenly opened my eyes and looked at him. "You." He interrupted me. His tone was cold and unshakable. "Continue." I struggled to finish 1 cup. After putting down the cup, I didn't even have time to catch my breath. Sean slowly uttered a few words. "It's not finished yet." Simon stepped forward and wanted to take the cup from my hand. I dodged his hand and continuously drank the remaining wine without stopping, feeling the liquid slowly sliding down my throat. I heavily put down the cup and took 2 breaths before looking at Sean. "Are you satisfied?" He gave an ambiguous laugh. He came forward and lowered his voice. Like a lover's whisper. "You don't think this is enough, do you?" How could it be? I always knew that he was a vengeful person. When we broke up, it was so ugly. I don't know how much anger he is holding in his heart. I stared at him without dodging. I lowered my head and glanced at the remaining wine bottles on the cart. I casually picked up a bottle and slowly poured it into the cup. As if it wasn't enough, I added a few pieces of ice. I looked at the crystal clear ice cubes. The cup wall was very thick and I couldn't feel any temperature. But it seemed that a bone-chilling discomfort came from my heart. His eyes became extremely dangerous. My eyelid twitched. I calmly shifted my gaze and raised my voice. "Since Mr. Sean is not satisfied, then I will drink until you are satisfied." As soon as I raised my wrist, it was grabbed by a strong force. He used a lot of strength. An unbearable pain came from my wrist. I tried my best to endure it. Sean's voice came from above. "You are still sensible. I am barely satisfied. Can I have the role now?" He seemed to be thinking about something and didn't speak. He glanced at Ava. Ava looked at him, a grieved lie. She came over and ran her finger across his chest through his suit. Her eyes were full of temptation and suggestive meaning. Mr. Sean. You is more emotional. Why don't you feel it? Sean's eyes moved slightly. He looked at the director. What do you think? As soon as he spoke, my heart sank sharply. Everyone knew that the director didn't like me. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone back on his word in the middle of initially choosing me as the female lead. He added Ava and turned me into the tentative female lead. I remembered what the director said at that time. This is how the circle is. There are people who are willing to do what you are not willing to do. I'll just watch how far you, such a lofty person, can go. I know there are many unspoken rules in the entertainment circle. But the moment it really happened to me, I still felt like a lost traveler, unable to move forward or backward. Is it lofty? No. I just remembered the smiling, clean and clear eyes of that young man many years ago. They couldn't hold the slightest filth. I felt disgusted and loathed these things from the bottom of my heart. Sure enough, the director said with a smile. Of course it's you. She is not like some people who are as wooden as a log. Some people. The words seemed to roll around his lips and tongue. Sean's Adam's apple rolled. He made a decision like passing a judgment. Then it's Ava. He turned to look at me and carefully stared at my face as if waiting for something. Sister Hua was so angry that she rolled up her sleeves and was about to step forward. I gently pulled her. I sighed. Let's go. We don't want it. 7. As soon as Sister Hua went out, she started cursing. What the hell? Since this role is not going to be given to you, why did he force you to drink? He's really not a human being. I thought he was handsome before. I was really blind. I'm telling you. Don't be sad. Who cares? As she said, she suddenly slapped her thigh. Oh. I forgot. You drank so much wine. Let's go. Hurry and go to the hospital. She urged Simon to call an ambulance. Simon was also suddenly jolted awakened. Frightened by her trembling lie, took out his phone. Just as he was about to press the call button, I snatched the phone away. Look at me. Do I look like I need to go to the hospital? Sister Hua cupped my face and looked back and forth. Strange. Why is your face so flushed? This isn't right. Logically speaking, at this time, you should be on the verge of spitting blood. Why do I think your complexion is much better than when you first came? I looked at her helplessly. Can't you wish me well? Sister Hua patted my face. Quickly tell me. What's going on? Did you take medicine when you came? I shook off the two of them and strode forward. My voice drifted in the wind. Let's go. Let's have a late night snack. Behind me came their questions one after another. I deliberately pretended not to hear. A soft orange glow enveloped the distant lake. A cool breeze blew gently, dissipating the gloom of the whole day. I pursed my lower lip. There was still a faint sweetness remaining in my mouth. In that cup was warm water with sugar added. During the time he was looking down and observing, he should have been looking for a mark. Because what was in the other wine bottles was all strong liquor. Sean probably thought he had concealed it well, but I saw him pretending to casually taste the liquid on his finger. I dislike drinking water the most. Sean thinks of various ways to coax me. Honey. Sugar cubes. And he can't even tell whether it's a reward for whom a kiss. He often holds a cup of water in front of me, speaking unhurriedly. Drink a cup obediently. I shook my head and dodged. He coaxed. Like this. You take a sip, and I'll kiss you. Is this a reward? You just want to kiss me. I mercilessly exposed him. He smiled, took a sip of water, and leaned close to me. His voice was slightly hoarse after being moistened by water. Extremely alluring. My breathing quickened. I couldn't help but stare at his rosy lips. There was a little moisture on them, making them even softer. My heartbeat was out of rhythm. I lowered my head and drank a whole cup of water from his hand and got the reward as expected. Just now, When I picked up the wine bottle and poured wine, I was fully confident that I would be stopped. Sean said all hurtful words, but still noticed my pale face. But now he has no patience to coax me. There are only threats and coercion. Thinking of his fierce appearance when he forced me to drink water just now. And then thinking of those eyes full of resentment back then. I have an indescribable feeling in my heart. I just feel that he should hate me. In less than 3 days, I received a new play. A film by director. Director is a well-known domestic director. No matter how big a star you are, he only looks at acting skills. His family background is very powerful. Filming in the entertainment industry is just a hobby. He doesn't give face to anyone. When I learned this news, both Sister Hua and I were very shocked. Until I saw Sean next to director. I lowered my head and understood something. Sean casually gave the resources of the previous play to Ava and then immediately handed me a better play. Is this giving a slap and then a sweet date? But it doesn't matter. I don't have so many demands now. As long as there is money to earn. It doesn't matter who gives it. In the evening, Seaman called. Yolanda. The male lead of that play has been changed. My hand trembled. What play? The previous play. The one where you were replaced. I have also been replaced. For a moment, I couldn't say a word. I know it must be Sean. The director of this drama admires Simon and very much and won't replace him for no reason. Only Sean. He resents me. So much so that Simon is implicated. After a few minutes of silence, Simone comforted me in turn. It's okay. Anyway, I don't like this drama either. I hate that director and don't want to act with Ava. Listening to the deliberately relaxed voice on the other end of the phone, I felt more and more uncomfortable. Seaman also lacks money. Filming one less drama means earning a lot less money. Why does Sean have to be like this? If he wants to take revenge on me, I accept it all. Why involve others? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. My anger accumulated until the day of the dinner gathering. I pulled Sean into an empty room. Sean was stunned for a moment, but still cooperated and followed me in. The door was closed. Sean spoke arrogantly. You don't need to thank me. What is extremely difficult for you is just a matter of me saying a word. As he spoke, the corner of his mouth curled up a little. If you really want to thank me, invite me to a meal. It doesn't have to be an expensive restaurant. Your home will do. I looked at him, looking directly into his eyes. Word by word. Why did you remove Simon as the male lead? Why did you let someone replace him? Do you know how much effort he has put in to achieve what he has today? Why do you destroy others with just one word? He stood there stunned. The smile on the corner of his mouth also faded. So, you came to me not to thank me, but because of another man to question me. Right? Listening to his evasive reply, the calmness I had admonished myself before disappeared completely. Yes. It's for him. He just wanted to help me block the wine that day and made you unhappy. Why have you become like this? For your own selfish desires. Treating others' futures as chips. Sean's calm face was shattered. His tone gradually became tinged with hatred. Yes. I am such a person. The Sean of the past has long been abandoned by you. If you care so much about him, how about you spend a night with me, and I will consider giving his play back to him? And next second, after he said this sentence, my pupils constricted suddenly. In an instant, a loud slap resounded in the room. Sean was slapped and turned his face aside. He stood still on the spot. You really make me sick. I turned and left the room, leaving him alone inside. I tried my best to calm my breathing. I couldn't tell whether my anger now was more because of Simon, or because of Sean's words. The innocent and clean teenager in my memory has been drowned in the years. My burning anger came to an abrupt halt when I met Simon. I stared at him blankly. Why are you here? Simon was also a bit confused. I received a call yesterday saying that I was chosen as the male lead for this play. I was chosen as the male lead for this play. These words echoed in my ears. I suddenly grabbed director's hand and asked him hopefully. Director, was Simon chosen as the male lead by you? Director looked at me in astonishment. Didn't Sean tell you? Simon was recommended to me by him. Didn't you two just go in and talk about this? He said that director is not a good person and asked me to take care of your friend. Where is he? Director, is the director who let me witness the dark and spoken rules for the first time. For a moment, I couldn't hear any sound around me. The sudden tinnitus made me seem to be covered in a vacuum glass cover. Even breathing was extremely difficult. Until someone rushed in a panic. Director Wayne. Mr. Sean has left. He seems to have been beaten. There's a slap mark on his face. Director stood up abruptly. What did you say? Been beaten? Didn't you stop him? That person looked distressed. How dare I? He had a dark face. I didn't even dare to speak. Director took a few steps forward and suddenly stopped. Looking at me as if I were a monster. He said, "Couldn't it be you who hit him?" I pinched my burning palm, feeling a bit desolate and at a loss. I didn't answer director's words. After saying goodbye in a low voice, I ran out in a panic. There were people coming and going on the street. But there was no Sean. I stared blankly at the countless unanswered calls on my phone. My eyes were sour. I blinked and slowly slid down against the sofa. After that day, Sean never appeared again, and I never got through to his phone. However, he invested a lot of money in the drama king Ping Xuan. I guessed this from director's face that couldn't stop smiling every day. One day, director came over with a smile. Xiao Zhang, you're amazing. I've never seen anyone who could hit Sean and get away unscathed. He's pouring money into my crew like crazy. You're really good. He gave a thumbs up and turned away. Simon leaned over, his tone a bit low. Yolanda, was it because of me that day? My hand that was flipping through the script paused for a moment. No. It has nothing to do with you. After all, I didn't figure out what was going on. I couldn't blame Simon. I lowered my head and continued flipping through the script. The words, "I don't want to talk," were almost written on my forehead. When Sister Hua rushed over, she startled me. She waved her phone and said excitedly, "Yolanda, look, director's drama can't be filmed anymore. There's no investment. All the investors have withdrawn their investment." I didn't quite understand. What about Sean? Didn't he want to invest? What? He was the first to withdraw his investment, and even said that anyone who invests in this drama is against him. Now that drama is completely ruined. Not only that, director has also gotten into a lawsuit. It said that he used his position to engage in sexual transactions. He's been called in for questioning. Even Ava hasn't been spared. I was stunned for a moment and picked up my phone to look carefully. There was a huge uproar on Weibo. All of Ava's previous videos were dug up. When the wall falls, everyone pushes. Those who had their roles snatched by her came out one after another to take sides. I didn't expect it. What's with the so-called pure White Lotus? Isn't she just someone who rose to power through underhanded means? That's right. What's the pretense? There are also some fans who still believe in her. Can't you stop talking nonsense without evidence? You didn't see it. What are you spreading rumors for? They were countered by other netizens. The videos are right in your face and you still don't believe it. You're just being stubborn. You're blind. Your sister doesn't even dare to come out. What are you jumping around for here? I handed my phone to Sister Hua. That is to say, director, it should be that Sean decided to bring him down. That's why he kicked me out of the crew, so that I wouldn't be involved with me later. My heart was filled with intense emotions. Sean should have taken revenge on me. I mercilessly abandoned him. He should have taken revenge on me. But why? I rubbed my temples to ease the headache caused by excessive emotions. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure standing beside director. Without thinking, I stood up and rushed over. Director was startled, looking at me and then at Sean. He said, "What's going on here?" Sean didn't even look at me. He got up to leave. I hurriedly stopped him. Don't go. I have something to say to you. He sneered. Don't go? Wait for you to give me another slap? My breathing stagnated. Wisps of regret wrapped around me. No. I'm sorry. I want to thank you. There was a hint of coolness in Sean's eyes. I don't deserve your thanks. I shook my head. No. I didn't figure it out. I'm really sorry. He looked at me. What else? I thought for a moment and shook my head honestly. Nothing else. I don't know what I did wrong again. He snorted and turned away. 11 on the day the crew wrapped up filming. I was just about to go to the wrap-up party when I was stopped by someone. Miss Zhang. Madame is looking for you. I looked at the tall bodyguard in front of me and was very sensible. I obediently followed him. In the coffee shop, there was only a delicately dressed woman sitting, looking at her face. I couldn't suppress the surging emotions in my heart. I walked straight over and sat down. She looked up at me in surprise. I understood that she was curious about why I was so calm now. I sneered in my heart. Mrs. Chu. What can I do for you? She took a sip of coffee and remained silent. I also fell silent. One day 3 years ago, this person in front of me suddenly found me and threw a stack of money at me condescending. Miss Zhang. I've checked. This money is more than 3 times the amount you spent on an yen. That restaurant was the best one around us. I had never eaten there before. I would only look at it when I passed by. But she was so disgusted that she didn't even want to sit down. The chair was pushed far away, as if touching it would dirty her. Take the money and leave an yen from now on. I looked at the money on the table that was thrown in a mess and asked in confusion. Who are you? She frowned. I am Sean's mother. I quickly stood up and said nervously. Hello. I haven't heard Sean mention you. Sorry. At that time, Sean and I were in the midst of a passionate relationship. This sudden meeting with the parents made me extremely nervous. I nervously looked down to check if my clothes were appropriate and missed the contempt that flashed in her eyes. After that nervousness passed, I realized what I had just heard. I stammered and asked, Are you saying that you want me to leave Sean? There was undisguised disgust in her eyes. Yes. What kind of family is my Zhu family? You're an orphan. Do you think you're worthy? I whispered in rebuttal. I have a grandma. She said. Grandma? You mean the person who picked you up and raised you when you were a few years old? Without blood relation. What kind of family is that? I clenched my fist and didn't know how to argue. I could only murmur in a low voice. Sean was also picked up by me and raised by grandma until now. Sean was picked up by me on a winter night. It can't really be called picking up because at that time, he was already 13 years old. I was the same age as him. When he first came, his eyes were full of fear and vigilance. I had inexplicably picked up an extra mouth to feed. Grandma didn't say anything either. She just smiled and handed him a freshly steamed bun. The bun was steaming hot. When he lowered his head to eat the bun, the steam covered most of his face and also hid his vulnerability. Grandma raised us with difficulty until we were 16 years old. In love and patience. Sean's pain was quickly soothed. Like grass that had been dry for a long time, and was then moistened by rain. It shook its tender leaves and completely forgot the withered time. He was very good at expressing love. Even more so than me. He was better at acting cute to grandma. Later, Sean and I started making money on our own and did everything. Once, he mysteriously took out a roasted sweet potato from his pocket and said proudly that this was the last one. He got it cheaply because he was lucky enough to snatch it. I held the steaming sweet potato. I wondered how he managed to keep the sweet potato warm all this way. When I looked up, I saw the sweat on his forehead. Oh, it turns out that you can sweat so much in winter too. In these years of walking hand in hand, liking each other was a natural thing. We met when we were 13, and fell in love when we were 18. At the age of 21, I was forcibly separated by a person who claimed to be his mother. All my perseverance vanished at the moment she said, "You are all burdens to him." How long will you still drag him down? I can give him the best life and education. Without you burdens. He will live very well. Isn't it just that you want more money? You can name a price. Her eyes swept over my washed-out clothes and the cuffs that were obviously too short. I hid my hand under the table and tugged hard at the cuffs. But it was in vain. The seeds of poverty and self-esteem sprouted at this moment. I had never felt ashamed of those embarrassing situations. But at this moment, when I recall them, the memories are still vivid. This is not the first time I have been in poverty. But it is the first time I have faced poverty head-on. I lowered my eyes and said with difficulty, I understand. As long as you guarantee that he can live well. I think as long as Sean lives well. He won't have to smile and apologize after being scolded by others pointing at his nose. He won't be reluctant to buy a pair of gloves for himself in the cold winter. He won't keep being servile for a job. I didn't take that money. So later I cursed myself countless times for why I had to hold on to that bit of broken dignity. I hate her extremely. Not because she took Sean away. But because she stimulated my grandma. 12 in the silent confrontation. I won. She put down the cup and finally couldn't hold back. I told you not to see an Ian again back then. Why did you still appear? I smiled. Did you make a mistake? It was Sean who appeared in front of me. Why? Doesn't he listen to you? She was momentarily speechless and coughed. He just can't tell what's most important yet and can't tell what he wants. As long as you leave, everything will be fine. I sneered. I won't leave. 3 years ago. I left him as you said. It's you. You couldn't keep him. She looked at me angrily. You left him so resolutely back then. You, like me, also abandoned him. Do you think he still likes you now? He's just to retaliate against you and torture you. I stood up leaning on the table and bent down close to her. I accept all his retaliation. But you, can't blood relationship make you family? I watched with satisfaction as her complexion gradually turned ugly and pushed the door and left. When I arrived, the wrap-up banquet had already begun. Looking at the dishes in front of me, I was at a loss as to what to do. But everyone had ordered dishes. And it wasn't good for me to add more. After all, I was late. Sheeman came over. After this is over, let's go out and eat something light. I nodded and gave him a reassuring smile. Suddenly, Sean raised his hand and called the waiter to add dishes. The director looked at his action curiously, peeked at the menu, and asked curiously, Sweet porridge. When did you start liking sweet things? Have you changed your taste? Sean nodded. Yes. I ordered some for all of you. Try it. I looked at the steaming porridge in front of me, picked up a spoon and took a sip. The one who likes sweets is me. Not him. After it ended, Simon stopped me and said a few words. I nodded and agreed. Just before getting into his car, I was pulled by a great force. When I was stuffed into the car, I was still a bit stunned. Sean slammed the car door shut and pressed me against the glass. His tone fierce. Where are you going with him? I tried hard to push him away. But he didn't move at all, and let me push. He continued to ask, Where? I was annoyed. What does it have to do with you? There was anger in his eyes. What do you mean it has nothing to do with me? Yolanda. Do you think you can still avoid me? I looked at him. So you know my name. I thought you had forgotten. Sean was choked for a moment and spoke hesitantly. Didn't you pretend not to know me first? I suddenly understood. That day I thought he definitely wouldn't want to know me. So, I lacked confidence. Then why didn't you shake hands with me? There was unnaturalness in his eyes. I shook hands with many people that day and didn't have time to wash my hands. You said before that if you touch others, you can't touch you. I blinked and remembered something. He is good looking. Once when he was doing a part-time job, a girl deliberately held his hand and asked for his contact information with a smile. He quickly pulled his hand back and said he didn't have a mobile phone. The other party turned and left, leaving a sentence. If you don't give it, then don't give it. What are you pretending for? In fact, at that time, he really didn't have a mobile phone. I was standing right next to him. When Sean saw me, he came over anxiously to explain. I ignored him. He panicked and wanted to come and pull me. I dodged his hand. Don't touch me. If you've touched others, don't touch me. At that time, I was arrogant because of love and was sulking. I watched coldly as Sean washed his hands until they were red. Then he came and held my hand pitifully. Look. I've washed it clean. Really? I suddenly couldn't say a word. I looked up at him and tried my best not to shed tears. When he saw that I didn't speak, he suddenly became aggrieved. Don't hide from me anymore. You hid from me 3 years ago. And you still hide from me 3 years later. You abandoned me. Can't I be angry? I just want you to take the initiative to find me. Why don't you pay attention to me? From the moment we met until now, the only time you took the initiative to find me was still for Simon. Can you be nicer to me? I'm very rich now and won't let you be tired. I kept looking for you but couldn't find you. 13 Of course he couldn't find me. After I left, his mother erased all traces of me. And I also disappeared without a trace. At that time, I thought that time would heal everything. Just as I was about to speak, Simon knocked on the car window urgently. Looking at his anxious face, a strong uneasiness suddenly rose in my heart. I pushed Sean away and quickly got out of the car. Simon's eyes were filled with huge panic, and he was so trembling that he couldn't speak. Sean grabbed my sleeve and pleaded in words, "Don't go with him." I pulled out my sleeve. "Sean, I have to go." Sean tried hard to pretend not to care. "I'll take you." "Don't take it, Axie." I couldn't hide my inner shock. I really didn't expect Sean to be able to back down so much. When I was in the car, I was still in a trance. Simon answered a phone call, and his face became even uglier. I turned and asked what was wrong. His face was pale and he suddenly hugged me and started to tremble. I stroked Simon's back and understood that something must have happened at the hospital. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sean's hand holding the steering wheel turning white at the fingertips due to force. When the car arrived at the hospital, Simon staggered and almost fell. I couldn't support him. Most of his body fell on me. Sean raised his hand and took him over. "Let me do it." After sending Simon to the ward, Sean and I looked at each other in silence. Sean must have also seen the woman on the hospital bed. He looked at me and hesitated to speak. I sat on the steps. "Just say what you want." He sat down next to me, and there was struggle in his eyes. "Does he take you as a substitute?" I was surprised. "Why do you say that?" He lowered his head. I saw it. He rushed over and hugged that girl without considering your feelings at all. "He's not good. They said you entered the entertainment industry because of him. Do you like him so much? Or, you can give me a little bit too." His tone gradually became softer. Perhaps he also felt that it wasn't good for him to say this. Or, I can be underground. At 23. Sean is extremely proud but can bend for me. I interrupted him. "Sean, who told you that I like him? Moreover, I didn't enter the entertainment industry because of him." I asked softly. "Do you still remember Grandma Go?" He nodded. "Of course I remember. But I can't find you. And I can't find him either." In a quiet corner of the hospital, I told him a story. 14 There was a young couple who had been childhood sweethearts and were very much in love. With the support of their parents, they were preparing to get married. When it was time to get married, the little girl happily tried on many wedding dresses. Beaming, the little girl loved beauty. Dressed up beautifully, she kept asking the boy if she was pretty. The boy always answered patiently that she was. But just before the wedding, the little girl began to have non-stop, crazy nosebleed. She had leukemia. Absurd, right? It seems that God always doesn't want people in love to have it easy. Leukemia, a disease that can rag down a family. They are just an ordinary family. Where can they get so much money? Later, somehow that boy entered the entertainment industry, and took on all kinds of jobs just to make money. For a full 5 years. They still love each other and haven't been worn down by illness and life. I looked at Sean and smiled. This little girl is called June. She is Simon's girlfriend. She is also my friend. I knew her first and then Simon. I didn't enter the entertainment industry because of Simon. I did it because I wanted to make money. On the day Sean left, I was watching him from a corner not far away. After he got in the car, I collapsed to my knees in despair. When I forced myself to go home, Grandma looked around behind me and asked me where Xiaonian was and where he had gone. I didn't know how to answer. But suddenly, several people came in and said that young Master Zhu had been taken home and would never come back. After hearing many such words, Grandma was so stimulated that she fainted. When she woke up, she had forgotten many things and also forgotten Sean. Later, we went to another city. Grandma's health got worse and worse. On the day she was sent to the hospital, she was pushed into the ward. I sat hugging my knees and cried my heart out at the door of the ward. Treatment cost a lot of money. Looking at the pitifully small balance in my bank card and thinking of the money I left on the table when I left that day, I raised my hand and slapped myself. The pride of the poor is worthless. When I was crying bitterly, I met a girl, wearing a hospital gown and looking very pale but with a smile on her face. She took out a pack of tissues and gently wiped my tears. Don't cry. You are so beautiful. Crying will make you look ugly. She was June. She was a person 100 times more cheerful than me. It seemed that she would never be defeated. 15 When Simon called me in, I felt a bit weak in the legs. I stood at the door for a long time before going in. June was lying weakly on the bed. Her arms were full of purple needle marks. Illness had taken away her previous vitality. It was extremely difficult for her to breathe every time. She smiled at me. Her voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. The boy you like has come back. Right? Take him to see Grandma. I was stunned in place. She laboriously touched my hand. Go. Don't leave any regrets. I used to talk about everything with June. I told her all my experiences. She was a very good listener. She always listened to me with a smile and occasionally teased me. I told her all about Sean. I was too lonely. There are only 2 people in my life, Grandma and Sean. But Sean left and Grandma was sick. I didn't even dare to mention him in front of Grandma. I was afraid she would be stimulated again. I looked down at June. June looked at me encouragingly. I turned around and found Sean. He didn't ask anything and obediently followed me. I didn't expect that Grandma recognized him at a glance. None of the scenes I had imagined happened. The doctor I had found in advance was also in vain. Grandma held Sean's hand trembling. Xiaonian, you're back. You've been gone for so long. Do you still remember Grandma? Sean looked at Grandma without blinking. His voice was choked. Grandma. It's me. I'm Xiaonian. I stood at the door. My nose was sore. I hurriedly lowered my head and let the tears drip on the floor. Grandma didn't forget Sean. She said she had known for a long time that I was with Sean. She had seen all those little actions that we thought were well hidden. On the day she woke up, she saw me staring blankly at Sean's room. My back was so lonely that it seemed as if I would die in the next second. So she pretended to forget. She was afraid that if it was mentioned again, I would be sad. She didn't mention it because she was afraid I would be sad. I didn't mention it because I was afraid she would be stimulated again. 16 On the day when Sean completely took control of the Zhu family, the always lofty Mrs. Zhu Felland was sent out of the company. She cried out in despair. Sean. I'm your mother. How could you do this to me? Sean was unmoved. Really? I thought I was just your tool. You can do anything to me. But you shouldn't use those disgusting means on Yolanda and Grandma Go. Only then did I know that Sean hadn't had a good time these years when he returned to the Zhu family. He was just a tool for competing for favor. When he did well, there was no praise. When he did badly, he would be verbally insulted. Only then did I understand that I had thought wrongly. How good could a person who abandoned Sean, when he was 13 years old, be to him? The drama I filmed, Qing Ping Chuan, became popular all over the country. As a result, I was seen by many people. Various resources came in a continuous stream. On the day I won the award, Sean asked me where I wanted to go. I said I wanted to go to the prison and see director. When I saw director, he was very disheveled. The flesh on his cheeks had sunken severely. His lips were so dry that there were tiny spots of blood seeping out. When he saw me, his eyes suddenly lit up as if he saw some hope. I walked in and said calmly into the microphone, "Director Huang, I came to let you see how far a person like me can go." He was stunned for a moment. Then he glared at me. "Lie. You think you can go far? You think it's really your ability? It's just waiting for Sean's pity. When he gets tired of you, I'll see what will happen to you. I'm waiting for that day." Sean was so anxious that he covered my ears and didn't let me listen. He turned around and said to director, "You know nothing. It's me who is pestering her. It's me who is begging for her pity. Also, that drama was selected because of her outstanding ability. It has nothing to do with me." I watched director be stunned by what he said and finally couldn't help laughing. After coming out, I asked Sean if it was true. He was a bit dejected and said yes. That day when he went to find director, before he could even say anything, director first showed several clips of me acting, and said I acted very well and was going to ask me to act in his drama. His head was hanging down, a bit frustrated. I still couldn't help you. For some reason, I reached out and rubbed his head as comfort. 17 June left. Simon's overflowing love couldn't keep her. Simon seemed to have aged several years all of a sudden. He didn't cry at all. I don't know who he was comforting. It's good. She was in so much pain. She held on for so long only for me. It's better that she's gone. Until June was buried. He didn't cry at all. He handed me a note and said it was from June for me. After we all left, he stood alone for a long time. Sean accompanied me out of the cemetery. After I opened the note, I turned around and ran back frantically. I saw Simon touching the tombstone and murmuring, "Baby, it doesn't hurt anymore. You've had a hard time. You love talking the most. How scared you must be without anyone accompanying you." Then he took out a fruit knife and slashed at his wrist. I screamed in horror. Blood dripped onto the soil. Sean quickly stopped him. I looked at Sean's hand, which was cut open. I held Sean's hand and trembled nonstop. Then I turned around and slapped Simon. "What are you doing? You want to commit suicide." There was no light in Simon's eyes. "Yolanda, I can't live anymore." My throat tightened, suppressing the urge to cry. "What about your parents? What about June's parents? June said that you must take good care of her parents. Don't you listen to her anymore?" Simon's long suppressed tears immediately fell. After he cried, he said goodbye to me. On the way to the hospital with Sean, he asked me, "Did June really say that?" I unfolded the note and showed it to him. "Yolanda, pay attention to Simon. He may follow me. Don't let him be alone. Find a way to make him cry. Once he cries, it will be all right." 18 Simon quit the entertainment circle when he was at the height of his popularity. He went back to his hometown. He said he wanted to be closer to their memories. After seeing Simon off, I didn't act in many plays either. I stayed with my grandma every day. I was in low spirits. Sean didn't come today. In the afternoon, he called me loudly downstairs. When I went down, he took out a bottle of milk from his arms and handed it to me. The milk was warm. I didn't ask him how he could keep the milk warm in winter. I turned my head to look at his face. The sunlight fell on his face. Soft and warm. He seemed very happy. "Come on. I'll take you to a good place." After parking, I looked at the amusement park in front of me with 1,000 thoughts. I used to look enviously at others playing when I passed by an amusement park. Sean asked me what was wrong. I said I had never played before. Sean laughed and said I was childish. After a while, he said that when he made money in the future, he would rent out the amusement park for me, so that I could play to my heart's content. I muttered in a low voice, I'm not a child anymore. He laughed. You are still a child even when you are 80. I got out of the car and walked forward, not wanting him to see my red eyes. He grabbed me and took off the scarf with his body temperature and tied it around my neck. He was very close. I felt my earlobes start to burn. Fortunately, he turned around and walked forward first. I breathed a sigh of relief. On the Ferris wheel, the lights were flashing. When it reached the highest point, he said, I still love you so much, Yolanda. His eyes were shining brightly under the lights, just as clean and clear as when he confessed to me back then. What is love? People are endlessly exploring this question. It has no sound, is not ostentatious at all, and is buried very deep. Extra. Sean's perspective the moment I saw Yolanda. I calmed down. She left me for 3 years, and I looked for her for 3 years. When the director came to me to ask for investment, I waved my hand impatiently and didn't want to talk to him until I saw him take out Yolanda's photo. I sat up straight. After confirming that she would come, I pretended to be calm and agreed to go. I had thought countless times about how to torture and take revenge on her after finding her. She abandoned me just like my mother abandoned me. But at the first sight of her, I was completely defeated. I like her. I like her so much. Even if I am abandoned, I still like her. She came to shake hands. I looked up and greedily looked at her face. She was thinner and more beautiful, but she seemed not to want to know me. I clenched my fingers. Just as I was about to raise my hand, I remembered that I had shaken hands with many people just now. She has obsessive-compulsive disorder about cleanliness. She probably wouldn't want to touch me. I regretted a little. Why didn't I go to the restroom to wash my hands just now? There was a woman beside me who kept talking to me. I ignored her and secretly looked at Yolanda. I was so happy. I didn't even have a single photo of her. I was so happy to finally see her. The director said something to me, but I didn't hear clearly until he asked Yolanda to perform. Yolanda is very concerned about face. Performing in front of such people would make her extremely uncomfortable. The director was still urging her. I remembered the director in my heart. I thought that as long as she looked at me once, just once, I would settle everything for her. But she really didn't give me a single glance. I was a little sad. However, I still opened my mouth awkwardly to stop it. This is not to help her out. This is. What is it? I don't know either. She seemed to really want to act in this play. What's so good about this crappy play? The director is not a good person. As soon as she lowered her head, I wanted to admit defeat. Just as I was about to speak, a man came over. He looked at her lie with concern. The way they were so oblivious to others was really irritating. Didn't that man see that she was not feeling well? She had low blood sugar. I remembered the first time she had a stomachic. She was covered in sweat. I was so nervous that my heart was about to jump out. I thought, is there any way I could take the pain for her? But I'm not a god. I can only rub her stomach at night to relieve some pain. I asked someone to send several bottles of wine and a bottle of sugar water. She hates drinking water the most. This is a punishment for her. That man is pretending to be a good person. He even drinks for her. If she really needs to drink, is it necessary for you to drink for her? She really drank a whole bottle of water. I stared at her lips and wanted to kiss her. No, I'm angry. She doesn't lower her head. No reward. She actually threatened me by drinking again. I'm so angry. No, that won't do either. The director is not a good person. She can't act in this play. She ignored me and left directly. I went to find the director overnight and wanted to give Yolanda the resources for his next play, hoping that she could remember me a little bit. I hadn't said a word when director said that he had taken a fancy to Yolanda. Before I could get angry, He added that he wanted Yolanda to be the leading actress for him. That's more like it. But then again, it's not right. Wouldn't that mean I haven't been of any help again? I thought and thought. That man seemed to have a good relationship with her that day. Then I'll help him. But it's just a loss of a few plots of land. It's not bad to make her happy. I'm done for. Only then did I know that Yolanda entered the entertainment industry because of that man. What's that man's name? Simon. Then haven't I sent a rival in love to her side? I collected a lot of information. I sent director to prison, and Deva can't turn things around either. They bullied her when I was away. Yolanda came to see me. And I was secretly delighted. But she didn't come to make up or thank me. She hit me for Simon. She said I was disgusting. My joy is like a joke. I am indeed disgusting. In the Jew family for these 3 years. I climbed up by any means. I don't want to be a burden anymore. It's very hard in the Jew family. But every time I think of Yolanda, I feel that I can endure a little longer. I am no longer that innocent teenager. I have done many bad things. I use work to frantically numb myself. But it's useless. I still can't help thinking of her. Does she like Simon so much? Then what about me? What am I? I miss her very much. I miss her shamelessly. On the day of the wrap-up banquet, I thought that I could admit defeat without her lowering her head. But it's useless even if I admit defeat. She still chose Simon. Even though Simon has someone he likes. My family was torn apart by a third party. My mother and my father had a marriage arranged by the family. After marriage, my father had an affair. That woman blatantly moved into my house, showing off her power, and even had someone throw me into a remote mountain area. I almost died outside. It was Yolanda who picked me up. She secretly brought me food. In summer, she came into my room and lit mosquito coils. When there was a power outage, and she was afraid that I would wake up because of the heat, she came to fan me. I know all of this. But she doesn't know that I know. I hate third parties. But at that moment, I couldn't help but want to become the kind of person I hate the most. I thought, as long as I can be with Yolanda, even being a lover is fine. Heaven and hell are just an instant. Yolanda doesn't like Simon. They are just friends. Yolanda took me to see Grandma. And then I understood. Yolanda didn't abandon me. I am a little sad. We wasted 3 years for nothing. But it doesn't matter. We still have many years. All these things must come to an end. The first time I took over the Shu family, I took away my mother's power. She asked me why. She gave birth to me but didn't raise me. She also tried to control my life. Just like controlling an obedient dog. None of these matter. But she shouldn't have hurt Yolanda. All those who hurt Yolanda must pay the price. June is gone. I stopped Simon, who wanted to commit suicide in front of his grave. Yolanda looked at my injured hand with red eyes and asked if it hurt. But I only felt relieved. She wasn't injured. That's great. She asked me why Simon committed suicide. I didn't answer. If it were me, I would do the same. Yolanda is in a bad mood. I rented an entire amusement park to make her happy. As I said, when I make money, I will let her have enough fun. At the highest point of the Ferris wheel, I couldn't help blurting out my love. I really love her so much. When I was a child, I asked my mother what love is. She looked at me coldly and said that I would never understand love. My genes are dirty. But that day, looking into Yolanda's eyes, I thought, love is Yolanda. Love is an exception. Love is willing and conceding defeat. Ceding defeat. Ceding defeat. Ceding defeat. Ceding defeat. Ceding defeat. Ceding defeat.